Welcome to episode 28 of 100 Years of Marine Corps Tankers, a station dedicated to honoring the legacy of Marine tankers and remembering the stories of what made the community special, told through the words of those Marines that towed the line. We are joined today by an armor officer who has dedicated over 21 years of service and multiple combat deployments in support of our great nation. It is my distinct pleasure in welcoming to the channel Lieutenant Colonel David Klingensmith.
JR, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Sir, I noticed you have a very interesting career path that began when you enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1999 and then subsequently attended Pennsylvania State University. Absolute fan of Penn State. My wife went there. And commissioning through the Marine Corps enlisted commissioning program. What made you want to become a Marine and subsequently a Marine officer, sir?
Well, actually, it's kind of a funny story. I was actually, sophomore in college, and I changed my major numerous times. And no kidding, I saw a school newspaper one day. Picture of all things I'm ashamed to admit was a Marine aviator standing in front of a Harrier, but it had the magical words on there, no obligation. I said, that's my kind of obligation. So I went into the LtCol office, this place I walked back and forth past every day on the way back and forth to the fraternity house, and walked in. Had me jump up on a pull-up bar, do some stuff, and next thing I know, I signed the contract. Went to PLC juniors, graduated, loved it. Went back next summer. PLC seniors, graduated, loved it. Went back to college. Still didn't have the focus. Dropped out of college and enlisted. So that's no kidding. Some Marine aviators suck me in, and it's I'm literally ashamed to admit that. But yeah. So interesting little side note to that though. So when I went to the recruiting office up in New London, Connecticut. My recruit training was actually waived. I did not go to recruit training.
Really?
And it was because I had completed PLC juniors and seniors. So I reported up to the recruiting station up in Springfield, Massachusetts, which another tanker currently commands right now, Zach Johnson. And they swore me in up there in my appropriate OCS civilian attire of pleated trousers and webbed leather belt.
With penny loafers.
Yeah, exactly. They said, congratulations, PFC. Here's your orders to MCT. I said, all right, that's awesome. What's MCT? And so next thing I know, I'm in the car driving MCT, and then all the questions began. Who are you? PFC Klingensmith. What are you doing? Checking in. Where's your alphas? I don't have any alphas. What happened to the ones I gave you in boot camp? Here we go. And so went in kind of on an open contract, no pay, no nothing, and ended up being a diary clerk. And then from there, did that a couple years and got picked up from ESEP, back to Penn State, and then commissioned.
Awesome. So you actually attended Penn State twice?
I did twice. Yes.
Wow.
Kind of like Tommy Boy.
That's pretty cool. And then your first duty station was out at 2nd Tanks, where you served as a platoon commander and then subsequently as a Company XO. So having been a diary clerk and lived the life of an admin Marine, what were your early impressions of the armor community, vice being, like I said, an enlisted admin Marine?
Well, the cool thing about being stationed at 2nd Fast when I was there is predominantly grunts, but the CO at the time was Major Donald C. Morse, and he was a tanker. And so, in the few opportunities I had to speak with him and picked his brain about tanks, and just sounded so cool. Everyone else was a grunt, and their business sounded boring. And so I think it was kind of planted early on in my brain that, tanks is the route I wanted to go. And then by the time I got commissioned and up to TBS, I'm one of those older lieutenants. I mean, I'm too old for this crap to go grunts, go humping around all over the place, but still want to go combat arms. So tank was my top choice. So I think it really early, it started on from just having the opportunity to serve under Major Morse the first time. And interestingly enough, he was the battalion commander of 2nd Tanks when I got there as lieutenant. So, I had the privilege of serving under that man twice.
Outstanding. And then 2004 is really where your leadership was certainly displayed when you were in support and commanding a unit for Operation Iraqi Freedom and ultimately the Operation Phantom Fury in Fajr. What were some of your memories from this deployment?
Well, leading up to the deployment, I know Joe Estep talked about it in one of the other episodes that you had there. We found out we were going over there, but we didn't know in what capacity. So we did the majority of our work. It was actually on Humvees. And the little information that we had coming back, they were just jury rigging some of these Humvees. They were putting saws on top of high backs and all sorts of crap. Because the company we're replacing was doing EOD security. It was Charlie Company First Tanks. So we got out there, very close to the point when we went out there was when Charlie Company transitioned onto tanks. So frankly, I'll tell you, I look back now from subsequent tours I've had in tanks, seeing what these lieutenants now are capable of and what I think I remembered at the time. And there was a lot of things that I just frankly did not know. So there was a lot of uncertainty. But it was kind of a crazy deployment, from day one, all pretty much all the way through to the end. We were in the temporary tents on board Camp Fallujah, and our first platoon was out west in Al-Qaim, and that's when Staff Sergeant at the time, Jimmy Sterla, he got hit by an RPG, and Sergeant Smith from First Tanks was killed, and so that was kind of an, oh shit, guys, hey, look, this stuff is real. And we literally left seat, right seat. We were getting shot at and blown up from day one of that deployment. So it was kind of nuts. I mean, there's just a lot of funny memories, a lot of stupid ass things that Marines do from that deployment that we don't have enough time in this to go over all of them. But I could pick and choose any number of them.
So when the mission changed and you guys knew you were going out on tanks, what as a platoon commander, you were a platoon commander at the time, right? Correct. So what were some of the things that you did? Either personally and then conversely for your platoon to get them ready to go out on tanks?
Well, it was a little interesting for us because we fell under RCT 7, but Regimental Combat Team 7's headquarters was actually based out of Al-Assad. So we had a company minus, like I said, we had one platoon out of Al-Qaim. So it was the company headquarters, the company H&S platoon, and second and third platoon. We were white platoon, and Jeff Lee's platoon was third platoon. So we were company minus. RCT 1 was stationed there at Camp Fallujah. And so we kind of had freedom to kind of do whatever the hell we wanted to. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but in many ways it was Wild Wild West. So we did a lot of just, at the beginning, a lot of AO orientation. So no kidding, it would come up with like a patrol order and they'd go and brief it to the company commander. It was Captain Chris Myers at the time. And would go out and see if we could kick up the hornet's nest, and then we'd come back. And then when we started doing company ops with some of the infantry, either companies or battalions or whoever we were attached to at the time, literally it was just going out and picking a fight. And so there were a lot of things we did that frankly doctrinally had no tactical task associated whatsoever. It was go out and shoot some shit and then come back.
You already mentioned Lieutenant Colonel Myers and some other. Who were some of the other leaders that helped shape you early as an officer?
Oh, it's funny. So I'm going to go back to Fort Knox at TV or at AOBC. And so when I was at AOB, and it was just after the invasion had occurred. And so they were doing what I now know was the TOAG at Fort Knox. And so there was a mixer over one of the motor pools there. Not RAMP, because RAMP is not an acronym. RAMP doesn't stand for anything. RAMP is not an acronym. So we're at the motor pool, we're doing a mixer, and this guy comes walking by, this captain. And I'm looking at him like, gosh, dang, that guy's familiar. So he's walking past, and I say, excuse me, sir, you look really familiar. He looks at me, he says, He says, well, and instantly I'm telling myself, God dang it, this was a mistake. I'm like, oh, shit. Well, what, sir? And he's like, where'd you go to school? I said, Penn State, sir. And he goes, what the hell's happening here, right? He goes, were you MESEP? Yes, sir. You going to first or second tanks? Second tanks, sir. We'll be waiting for you. Need to stormed off. At the time, I thought I was going to Charlie Company, and I knew that guy was the Alpha Company commander. When I got there, I'm checking in with Colonel Morse, and he just smiles at me. And anyone who knows him, he has that smile, and he looks at you. He smiles and he said, Dave, I know I told you you're going to Charlie Company, but you're going to Alpha Company. You're going to work for a real meat eater, Todd Sudmeyer, call sign Psycho 6. And so that was my first company commander. And boy, he comes down here periodically. He's up in Lejeune. He comes down here. I currently work for Colonel Langfeld, and the two of them were lieutenants together. So he's come down here several times. We've had some beers, and I tell him some of these stories, and I swear he doesn't remember them. I'm like, oh, sir, these things happened. They absolutely happened.
This is fact.
You used to send Wes Pass, who was one of the other platoon commanders, on an AO orientation to collect soil samples from the different LZs around Camp Lejeune. And so it was very interesting. So working for him, and then when the other company commanders in the old second tank CP, everyone remembers, if you're coming in from the one side, you walk through Delta and then Alpha till you got the center hatch, then you Bravo and Charlie. It was running the gauntlet for the lieutenants. It literally was. You'd walk through Delta Company and hopefully Captain Watt didn't look out and wear you out for something. Then if you were an Alpha Company, you were great, but God forbid you were a lieutenant from one of the other companies walking through Alpha. And it really wasn't that much different from going over in like Bravo Company when you had Ethan Harding there for a while. And then Jeff Houston was roaming. It was just like, what the hell's going on here? John Lauder was the 4. So there wasn't really a safe place for the lieutenants. And then you kind of had a very different shift in leadership style when Captain Myers then took over Alpha Company. And you know, that guy can at times be very difficult to work for, and I've told him that many times. And but I would work for that man again in a heartbeat if given the opportunity. And in fact, I've had the opportunity to work for him twice. But very different leadership styles. So lots of different influences. And then when I went over to the XO and Delta Company, working for Matt Femmel, again, very different leadership style. So we sort of got this second wave of different captains in, and sort of the dynamic of the battalion, I think, shifted.
Let's step back to Operation Phantom for just a second.
Sure.
So kind of set the stage as far as when you guys get into theater. And I think when I talked to Joey Yee about this, he had mentioned that you guys were there for like 30, maybe 40 days. So enough time to kind of get, like you said, some of the AO perspective and things. As a young platoon commander, I mean, you obviously weren't that young. You were a little bit older in age, but as an inexperienced, we'll say, platoon commander, what were some of the thoughts going through your head as you prepared for this mission? And did you have a perspective that this was going to be quite as big of an operation as it turned out to be?
No, we didn't. You know, going back to TBS, I was in Mike Company after we graduated, waiting for our AOB class to pick up. And so we were sort of tracking some of the things going on in the invasion. At this point, you have your MOS. So we saw some of the casualties that Marine Corps tank community had taken. So it was like, okay. But then, you know, they found Saddam and everything ended. Everyone came back, so I said, all right, I guess tanks aren't going to have a role in this anymore. So again, you know, my first better part of the year was, you know, CAX to be a sidewinder, then CAX, and, you know, doing some training and SR-10 a couple times in there. And then boom, you guys are going over to Camp Fallujah. Okay. You know, in that period, you had the Blackwater contractor. So, okay. Yeah, we see there's bad things happening over there. So, and yeah, I was, the youngest platoon commander. Jeff Lee and Todd Colombo, those ancient bastards, were both like 6 years old as lieutenants, and at 29 years old, I was the youngest one.
Wow.
So it's kind of funny. But yeah, literally left seat, right seat, point of contention. I won't go over now, but you know, generally speaking, it's a good business practice when you're turning over with the company and that turnover is concluded, that you move out of your accommodations, which are near the tank ramp, and give it to the inbound guys. That didn't happen. So we were actually operational from these kerosene-soaked canvas tents. We're sitting over by the fuel farm, which were a nice, juicy target. And in fact, the day we moved out of the tents, they got mortared and they all went up in flames. So, you know, good, fortunate timing on our parts. And really, when we started going, I mean, literally, I remember sitting in the Lotus hatch with Ben Adams. And, you know, like, what are we doing? Well, we're going over there. Yeah, you just should put your head down. Why? It's like, because there's RPGs like flying around. And literally, you should just like park outside the city and then like just wait. What are we waiting for? For them to start shooting. Then what? Then we're going to kill them. Oh, okay. Sounds good. And so we, no kidding, did that all the way up until late November. And, you know, sometimes we did it with this infantry company or this infantry battalion. And it really was all shaping up. So we did stuff down south. We did stuff up north. We had some crazy night movements. And Captain Myers was very demanding over the net. And there were times that I thought we were going to lose tanks. I remember looking through my NVGs, and God, technology has changed so much better now since the PVS or the PV7s and 14s and the old freaking God, the FEP site now, obviously. Looking over and seeing Gant's tank, my 3 tank, just disappear down like in a hill. I'm like, oh shit, they just fell down like 100-foot quarry, and then poof, they come up. But now we're not in 2-1-4-3 anymore. We're in like 2-4-3-1, and it's just chaos. But no, kidding. We used to joke around in my tank that I won't tell you what we used to call them, that the insurgents had a 9-digit grid on our tank, because there would be a mortar just to the right, mortar to the left, mortar in front, and, you know, just getting to the point of bracketing. And they'd say, hey, no, sir, come on, we need to back up. I said, no, we need to move forward. We're not backing up and giving them a moral victory. So we drive forward.
Right.
And we'd wait for Jeff Lee's platoon to go and hit mines. They were a good mine clearing platoon. So, you know, it was crazy. And when it came down to 8 November, it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm platoon commander and we're in the staging area and I know what time our LD is. And, you know, I didn't sleep while we were in the LD, but I was walking around to make sure that everyone else was sleeping. And, you know, it kind of sucked because going into that, it's like, you know, we don't know how long we're going to be in there. The exchange was picked clean. So, you know, the pogey bait and the tobacco options inside the tank were very limited. We had pouches of Durango chewing tobacco, which is the absolute worst thing, which is probably why you've never heard of it. But between that and my gunner later on, his deer jerky, or Wendell Morgan from, you know, the swamps of Georgia, there wasn't anything to stay awake. So it was, a lot of it was react. It was, we're here, go down there, kill, and make sure the grunts don't get hurt. And so if anyone's putting themselves in harm's way, it's going to be us.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, and it's something we brought out already on the channel, but it's something I want to echo again, is that, you know, like you just summarized that last sentence with you know, to keeping the grunts protected. That really, I think, is the essence of a Marine Corps tanker. You know, because we, yes, as combat service support, we kind of from very early on learned that lesson and really kind of live and breathe that lesson as well. I love the beer, sir. Good, good call. 2005, you like you said, like you'd already mentioned, Company DXO deployed again, also part of OIF. How was this deployment similar or different from the first?
Some similarities, but in other ways, you know, it couldn't be any more night and day. In that first deployment, our platoon fired close to 2,500 main gun rounds. On that second deployment, I fired 0 rounds of any caliber. In fact, as a company, only a few rounds fired. I think it's probably because we killed most of the stupid ones on that first deployment. But as a Company XO, taking on a new role, and I really embraced the idea of headquarters platoon commander, and that was really fulfilling, because I mean, you got 40 some Marines, you got all walks of life, and now all of a sudden as a platoon commander, it's easy to gripe at the armor because he doesn't give you this, that, or the other. But now I'm responsible and got to cover that guy and make sure he's doing what he's supposed to be doing along, you know, along with the maintenance guys. And I was really fortunate. I had a phenomenal maintenance chief in Tim Greer, first sergeant retired, and then a phenomenal tank leader and dirty ass Gene Potes, who I talked to a couple of weeks ago. And you know, from that perspective, though, you know, working with those guys, and we had some pretty good platoons. We had a mishmash of platoons, you know, the varying levels of competency in there. But from that perspective, now being in the, you know, the headquarters section, and, you know, adjusting some of our training to anticipate, you know, some similar conditions. And then when we got there, it ended up being completely different. We ended up operating in the regimental security area and having our own battle space, and having some attachments with us, some EOD and some other things. And really, you know, it's like the Spaceballs, you know, combing the desert, we ain't found shit. And it was finding some caches and you know, a lot of dead Iraqis and some stuff like that. So very different. Operating some different AOs, had a platoon on the western side of the Euphrates over at a place called Camp Smitty for a while. And but a very, very different deployment. You know, Camp Fallujah was similar, but in the first one, my platoon, you know, we did the push, and then we were down in Abu Ghraib prison for a better part of a month, and then we're up and hit with the company for maybe 2-3 days. And then we're up in the triad, Haklania, Haditha, and Barwana, living out of the dam. So there was a lot of autonomy with our platoon in that first deployment. Second one, it was, for all intents and purposes, a company minus that one platoon for the duration. But some really good leaders in there too. You know, guys like Sergeant Major Woods was one of the platoon sergeants in there. Master Tim O'Brien, retired Master Sergeant. Some really good Marines in there. So,
and then your company commander time is similar to my own, as you served as the Inspector-Instructor for Company A, 4th Tank Battalion at Camp Pendleton in beautiful San Diego from 2006 to 2009. So what was this experience like?
Well, I'm a dumbass, because, you know, I heard everyone, oh, you can be an I, oh, it's skate, this, that, and the other. And, you know, on paper, it just says San Diego. And it's one of those times, you know, with the Battalion XO, hey, with Klingensmith, where do you want to go? What do you want to do next? Hell, man, I don't know. I'm a lieutenant. I don't know where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do. Anything in San Diego? Next thing I know, and this is while I was in Camp Fallujah as the XL, I said, yep, you got orders to PWST 4th Tank Battalion. Well, what the hell is that? San Diego, whatever, we'll figure it out, right? So it says Miramar, and without calling ahead or doing any due diligence, without doing any diligence, I just assumed it was Miramar. So I ended up buying a place down in close to Miramar. Lo and behold, here's our tank company up at Camp Pendleton. God nice. Dang it, man. It's like anywhere from a 45-minute to as long as 2.5-hour commute up to Pendleton every day. And I realized very early that it could be a skate if you want it to be, but if not, then it's like the best of times, worst of times, because Marfa Res is the worst. Everything about Marfa Res is the worst. The Reserve Marines are awesome. If you ever come across a bad Reserve Marine, he's just a poorly led one who's coddled and treated like a reservist, not like a Marine. And again, you know, just to continue the trend of having fantastic staff NCOs, you know, starting with Joe Estep, and then, you know, Tim Greer was my platoon sergeant in Delta. And then going up there, I had the best tank mechanic there ever was is Lance Bauman as my maintenance chief. I'll take that to my grave. And then I had Chris Willenbecker as my training chief, and fell in on a phenomenal reserve staff and CO out there in Eddie Rivera as our AR master gunner. And that was a great tour. Between the three of them, I mean, there were a lot of shenanigans and jackassery and tomfoolery that we did on the ramp, like, you know, putting desks on top of the roof and airsoft battles and all sorts of stuff. And hell, me and Lance's dogs grew up as puppies on the ramp, and it was fantastic. But man, that tour, being working with those guys, it was the first time I'd worked with folks from first tanks. So, you know, more exposure to first tanks and going out to stumps to go to range 500. Eventually, we got to the point where we said, this shit's for the birds. And we stood a 408 Alpha aboard Camp Pendleton. We shot gunnery there a couple times. And that range is an ass kicker. In fact, we had the Mu platoon from first tanks come out there a couple times, and they all lunked. They couldn't do it because it's none of that left, right, 500 stuff. It's none of the Mohawk second tank stuff. It's left, right, up, down. And the reason you didn't see that target there, Tank Commander, is because you didn't look up in the mountains. And so that was really cool. A lot of cool tanking opportunities aboard Camp Pendleton, which the 41 area, which most people might not know, the reason it has concrete roads is that used to be the home of 1st Tank Battalion before it moved out to 29 Palms. So fun fact.
Yes, sir. So how did it come to be that your unit was selected for deployment?
Not sure, because, you know, from beginning in 04 is when we started rotating. You know, we started Alpha and Charlie Company second tanks were there in 04 to 05, and then 2 companies from first tanks came out in 05 to 06, somewhere in there. Then we started alternating between the battalions, and then it really became a personnel availability thing. So, you know, they started activating reserve companies. Sometimes they were augmented to the active ones. Sometimes active members were augmented over to them. I didn't think it was going to be our turn because Alpha Company had just deployed, done base security at Camp Fallujah. But lo and behold, yeah, we got the call, and Delta Company went there before us, and we replaced them. Delta Company 4 tanks, and that was it. We had 1 reserve officer, and didn't want to deploy, non-obligor, so he got out. And so looked around, there was only 1 officer left, and that was me. And so I told Palman and Willenbecker, they already had integrated billets, but I said, you assholes are coming with me. So that's how Willenbecker was the tank leader.
So you were actually structured as the company, like the company picked up and deployed as a company?
As a company. So at the time, though, again, Alpha Company, 4th Tanks, on paper was co-located with the battalion in Miramar. In actuality, they existed aboard Camp Pendleton because of a handshake between 4th Tanks I&I and the CO 511 before 511 moved over to Polgus. And so there was nothing on paper anywhere that said Alpha Company 4 tanks exist aboard Camp Pendleton. And that came into play later when MSOB tried to move in there, and we essentially had to claim squatters' rights. But as such, because we were co-located with the battalion, we didn't have the I&I staff. So the I&I staff, when I say it was 4, it was 4. It's me, Willenbecker, Bauman, and Sergeant Webster, who was our AR ramp chief, and then Gunny Rivera. So 5. I'm sorry, we had 5. Which is insufficient to do everything that the other reserve companies had to do, the other I&I staffs. So when we got the word to deploy, I took the Delta Company second tanks model that I had and said, we need to go with a reinforced company. And so that's when we started to pick and pull Marines from H&S Company, our motor T operators, some additional mechanics, some additional tankers, and all that stuff. And so we built the company until we were up over 100.
What were your biggest challenges for this deployment?
That deployment was crazy. It was a summer deployment, was my first one, and we lived on the tanks in an assembly area for the better part of the 7 months. We got there, and in fact, did our limited RIP with Delta Company up in Rawa, and that was interesting. First time I had been there, and they left, and it was like, okay, we got to drive across this janky-looking bridge. Yeah, no problem, 1 tank at a time, and eventually we consolidated down to Al Assad and linked up with this task force mech. This ad hoc task organized task force, and we moved up north in the general direction of Mosul and had our own battle space. And you know, I think at the peak of it, we had the tow platoon from first tanks was attached to us. We had an EOD detachment, an engineer detachment. We had an LAR platoon. We had ground sensor platoon. I had a combat camera kid who looked like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. And they were even rotating platoons from Alpha Company first tank to come and serve with us. So I think at the peak, I can't remember what the number was. Willenbecker would be able to tell you, but I want to say we had close to 100 vehicles and 200 and something Marines. So I mean, we were like our own task force. It was awesome. They kept throwing shit at us. And like, what am I supposed to do with a working dog detachment? I don't know. I don't want that. And so we had our own NL. It was cool. And again, I think we only fired off a couple of rounds because by and large we were out there. But we really used our trains, and so they were our quartering party. So they would go out every couple of days. We're moving assembly areas. Said, all right, let's do a map recon and go out there gunning at the time. And they'd recce it, and we'd be on a slow roll, and we'd get out there, and they'd secure it, and then we'd come out, set up assembly area ops, set up a COC, and for anyone who's ever run assembly area ops, it sounds really simple. It is one of the most challenging things that we do as tanks. And boy, those reserve Marines, God, they were phenomenal. They would wake up in the morning, do their before ops, they would operate all day, come back in, do their after ops, stand watch all night, wash, rinse, repeat for 7 months. And frankly, I love the Marines that we had from first tanks, but those reservists ran circles around them. And that's a fact. And I used to call them my NFRs, my nasty fucking reservists. I said, I can call you that because I'm here with you. And those little shits in my tank, they were giggling one day. NFADs. I'm like, what are you all talking about? NFADs. I'm like, nasty fucking active duty. You shut up a little.
Never heard that before. That's pretty good.
But we're very fortunate. Anyone who says I want to get out there and sling rounds, well, you're a fool. You've probably never been shot at. So I was perfectly fine being able to say we went back with everyone that we took there with. So I think a lot of that was just their vigilant presence, and it was very rewarding. The unrewarding part was Marfa Res. They're the worst. Anyone who's ever served, as you would know, they are the worst. Yeah,
they got a little better, I think, since you were there, but certainly challenges were there from my first day up until my last.
Yeah, 3-star level, calling down to the captain. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you just bypassed a few levels of chain. You might want to call the battalion first, or maybe call for 4th Mardiv. I don't know. Someone, don't call me. I'm not taking this call.
Your career continued as you attended Marine Maneuver Captain's Career Course, and interestingly enough, it says here Fort Knox. Knowing that it subsequently moved to Benning, were you one of the last classes to go through there?
I think so. I think maybe the second to last one. And I was really hoping to get EWS because at the time I was saying, oh man, I've been to Army schools. I want to go to Marine school. And then it wasn't C-Club at the time, whatever it was called, however it was slated when it came out. There were, I think, 4 or 5 of us, all of them who were from first tanks, ended up at EWS, and I was one that got MCCC, and I was pissed because the monitor was a first tanks guy at the time. I'm like, son of a bitch, this is some bullshit. But things worked out well. I actually ended up meeting my wife there during that during that assignment, and so it all worked out well. But yeah, I was one deep. I had a British Royal Marine as my instructor.
Wow. And then after that tour, or after that assignment, as you said, you served as the XO for the recruiting station St. Louis, part of 9th Marine Corps District. What lessons from tanks helped you with this assignment?
Well, it's because of tanks that I ended up in that assignment. So actually had 3 different battalion INIs when I was there. The first one was Lieutenant Colonel Nick Vukovic, and I think he ended up retiring. He retired out of that billet. Assistant I was Psycho 6 Todd Sudmar, by the way. And then TC France took over for Vukovic. And anyone who's ever worked for Colonel France knows he can at times be a very difficult man to work for. So when we got off the plane coming back to March Air Force Base from that deployment, he said, Dave, you need to go somewhere other than back to tanks. What do you mean, sir? He's like, you've deployed as a platoon commander, an XO, and a company commander. You've demonstrated company grade proficiency. You don't need to go back. You need to demonstrate some versatility to the Marine Corps. And I'll forever be grateful to him for that, because he was 100% right then, and he still is. So at that point, I said, all right, well, where does a captain go? We know where lieutenant captains go, right? Mm-hmm. Where does captain with 3 years time and grade, where does he go? And as a guy with no recruiting experience, he said, well, about the only thing that is always going to be viewed favorably and isn't really rank dependent is recruiting. And so, oh, God. And so the monitor was an arty guy. He wasn't too hip on the idea. And so the Ockfield sponsor, God, that guy was great. And Mike Pfister is a phenomenal guy. Called him, and the monitor called me a couple days later, seemingly with his tail between his legs. Like, I can offer you Montgomery or St. Louis. I'm like, ugh, I don't want to go to Alabama. That sounds terrible. St. Louis. And so it was because of Colonel France and that I ended up out there. And what I will tell you about that job, to this day, I'll tell you, there's no more overworked captain in the Marine Corps than a recruiting station XO. I'm on recruiting right now, and I still stand by that word, and it's not biased. If you do the job right, that job sucks. That's to steal a quote from Colonel Myers and twist it around into my own version. Let me tell you my theory on being an RSXO. It sucks. Any questions? But growing up in the tank community where you learn to multitask, and especially from the deployments and go do this, and you got all the chaos going through your helmet and the comm fires and dealing with the Marines inside your turret and managing troops and being aware where the damn grunts are and all that stuff prepares you for chaos and being able to multitask and do all of those things. And so that absolutely was conducive to success as an RSXO, 100%.
Well, when the chaos stopped, I think you got a chance to kind of see the other side of that coin when your schooling continued and you attended the Air Command and Staff College at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. And you already mentioned kind of in your intro as to how you came to be a Marine, and your disdain for aviators is certainly clear. Now you're part of an Air Force base. And certainly this was different than any deployment or any assignment you had previously. How different was it being associated with the Air Force? And did you see firsthand where the lion's share of the DoD budget goes?
Yeah, absolutely. And God dang, the Marine Corps has a way of getting their freaking their money out of your hide. You remember that monitor? He said you can go to Montgomery or St. Louis. I said, I don't want to go to Montgomery. Well, Maxwell Air Force Base is in Montgomery, Alabama, so they still got me. They got me good. And when the CPIP list came out, I was again hoping to go to a Marine Corps school. And so when that thing came out, I was sitting up in the recruiting office up in Champaign, Illinois. I remember on the computer scrolling down, and I didn't have to scroll very far because Air Command and Staff College comes first on the list, and there's Klingensmith. I said, what the hell? Why is a tanker going here? And I figured, hell, even in St. Louis, maybe they'll just send me over to Leavenworth to go to Command General Staff College. But nope, Air Command and Staff College. So, going into it, I had no expectations for the airmen. Because I hadn't served with the Air Force before. I had low expectations for the Marine aviators, which was the majority of the other Marine students who were there. There were only like 10 of us. It was actually a very good school. The Air Force, man, those officers, that branch of service highly values education and not like PME, go put the check in the box for going to Staff Academy, but actual legitimate education. And those guys are wildly intelligent. Some of them too smart for their own good. Some of them the inability to apply some common sense, but really good dudes and just really good dudes. So it was actually a very rewarding year. The school was challenging, academically tough, but if you're in the Air Force, you get to wear a flight suit, everyone except their version of adjutants. If you're a space guy, flight suit, Intel, flight suit, these like the old Buckeye commercial, right? Space, flight suit. And that got a little old, some of their stuff. But you look at the Marine Corps, 200 some years of existence. Well, they're like 50 or 60. And they're still searching for an identity, but different philosophy on life. It's definitely much more of a really business than anything, and no fault of their own. It's just how the Air Force is structured. But those guys had never led before. They haven't been put in leadership positions, and a lot of them, their first leadership opportunity was going to be leaving the school. So, I think probably my closest friends in that school were some of the international officers, a couple Army grunts, and some international students who have different perspectives on things. But some really good dudes. I'm still in contact with some of them, and anyone ever get the opportunity to go to another branch's school, I highly recommend it. We all know what the Marine Corps is. Go see how the Air Force teaches. Go be around airmen. Go be around soldiers. Go be around sailors. We know what Marines are. We're going to get 20 years out of the Marine Corps. Go experience the other branches.
Yeah, that's great advice. 2014, you talk about the change of assignments and really kind of out of the norm. You were assigned to a truly remarkable billet as the Deputy Commander for Detachment 2, Defense Prisoner of War, Missing in Action Accounting Agency, otherwise known as the DPAA, in Hanoi, Vietnam. Your duties included joint and multinational planning of quarterly missions throughout Vietnam in search of remains of service members who remain unaccounted for from the Vietnam War. And just saying that sends chills down my spine. I mean, that's just phenomenal. And I can only imagine the honor that the billet holds. What are some of your memories from this tour?
Oh, God, we don't have enough time in this video. Nothing but memories. What a phenomenal billet. And literally, my monitor at the time, a guy named Eric Clark, and initially he called and said, I hate to do this, but I got to send you back on recruit. And I'm like, Jesus, man, I just left that. I don't want that shit. And then it changed. He said, hey, never mind. Give me a call back in a week. And he said, what do you think about Vietnam? I'm like, what the hell do you mean what I think about Vietnam? We don't have Marines there. And he's like, I don't know. I said, what do you have there? He said, I don't know, man. Looking for dead bodies or something. Mm-hmm. And so, okay. And, tried to sell it to the wife. She wasn't necessarily on board. And, but we looked at it as an adventure, and oh my God, what an adventure it was. Every single day was an adventure over there. If you ever want to laugh your ass off, just go to YouTube and look up Hanoi traffic. And this guy rode a motorbike in that shit every single day to work. Every single day, you see some crazy stuff. But really, it was a great planning experience. You'd bring teams from throughout PACOM over to come over there, and all throughout the country. I've been to damn near every province in that country to go search for crash sites, burial sites, engage with locals who potentially have human remains to trade on the black market, all sorts of stuff. You're working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, National Defense, Public Security to really account for, not recover, but to account for missing service members. And what a phenomenal ability. And I can't say enough great things about the Vietnamese people. They're absolutely phenomenal. In every single province I went to, not one time did anybody ever express any animosity towards me as being an American. As long as the Chinese are around, they'll always hate the Chinese, but not one bit of animosity towards us as an American. Very forgiving people. And it was frustrating at times because we try to get American veterans to come out to help us locate sites as they can remember. And there's still a lot of reluctance on some of our veterans' parts to go out there and do that. So that's a constant recruiting effort, for VFW, American Legion, anybody who has any firsthand knowledge. We're always trying to force them over to the agency to get them out to Vietnam to help account for, their brothers in arms. But what a phenomenal tour. I ate crazy shit. I drank a whole lot of moonshine and lived in the economy. There's no base. And we don't fall under the embassy, which is a very unique thing out there. So no kidding, we live in the local economy. I lived in like a four-story, like 4,500 square foot house. We had a helper and a gardener and a cook, and rode a motorbike to work. And our oldest went to an international school, and just absolutely crazy.
2016 is when you returned back to tanks. And this time you were selected to serve as the battalion executive officer for 1st Tank Battalion. What were some of your most notable changes in the community that you witnessed from your time away?
Well, it's funny because when I went back, it was about the first time that I'd ever done the monitor. It was a guy I went to Penn State with. And so he said, Dave, I got to send you to 1st Tanks. I said, all right, I was hoping to go to 2nd Tanks. He said, well, I'm, 5 for 3 and 2 for 4 at 1st Tanks. I said, all right, well, 1st Tanks it is. Makes it easy. And so, the old adage, cry when you get there, cry when you leave. And, the family wasn't too hip on going out to 29 Palms. But I knew Colonel Myers was going to be the CO. And again, hadn't worked for him before. And so got there and said, you can be the XO. And had some good folks in the battalion. But, it's challenging as a lieutenant. When I was a lieutenant, I never wanted to go near the Battalion XO. For other than posted for duty, you didn't want to go there because you're going to get your ass worn out for something. Mm-hmm. And I remember that being like, man, what a great opportunity for Battalion XO to actually be a resource to the lieutenants and to the captains, mentorship, you name it, for anything. You just want to shoot the shit, come on in. And, probably to the detriment of my family's ability to see me, there were folks at my door all the time, but it was so rewarding. And I'm still in contact with these lieutenants and captains, majors, all the time. Talked to a couple of them today, in fact. And so I took kind of a paradigm shift in my approach to that position so at least what I perceived XOs to have done when I was a lieutenant. And but man, the scope of that battalion and what you're responsible for and the new facilities and all the competing personalities. And what was really cool is we had more female officers in our battalion than any other unit in the division, and they were fantastic. And the Marines in the battalion were fantastic because here was the expectation: do your job. There wasn't any of that sexist bullshit or any other stuff that other units. It was just do your job. That was your expectation in the battalion. And it was a really, really good experience. And then, when Colonel Myers turned over, I had the opportunity to work for Matt Zumo, just talked to him today too, great guy too. And so, I was really fortunate to be able to work for both those men. But great Marines there, great Marines, great training opportunities. A lot of them, try not to say too many of the war stories because, oh, that's bullshit. I want to go. I want to do that. And it's like, guys, sorry, I can't make 1st Tank Battalion go pick a fight with a bunch of insurgents in another country. But it was frustrating, I think, for a lot of the Marines in that, we weren't even doing U's anymore. I think we had one U platoon, then the American went down, couldn't take tanks. And I think that was sort of maybe the beginning of the end of some of the divestment stuff. But so really started to look for opportunities, to get some of these Marines out the door and stuff. Sent a couple of them on DPAA missions, some recovery missions. Go over there and let's reward our superstars. Hey, Sergeant, whoever, you've been doing a phenomenal job here. To show you our appreciation, you're going over there for a couple months to go work on this. Don't fuck it up. But great Marines, great Marines. I loved it. I truly loved that bill. It was great.
Currently, sir, you're serving as the Deputy Assistant Chief of Staff for recruiting Eastern Recruiting Region down there in MCRD Parris Island. Obviously, this is a very prominent position and one that is certainly challenging, which puts you kind of close to the future structure of the Marine Corps. Having a firm understanding of the future structure of the Marine Corps, what message do you have for the younger Marines that have had to make the tough decision post the divestment?
Yeah, divestment stuff, and like we talked about before, I think it's very different paths for the officers than it is for the enlisted Marines. As officers, we dabble. Whatever your primary MOS is, you dabble. Because you dabble as a lieutenant, then you jump out into something else. And you come back as a captain to dabble, then you jump out to something else. Then maybe you get back as a major to dabble, then you get out. And then for most, that's it. The enlisted Marines, no, they're tied to it. And their opportunities to go elsewhere and experience other things is by and large restricted to whatever the HIST offers, whether it be here as a drill instructor, a recruiter, or MSG guy, or a combat instructor. So I lat moved. I'm actually an 0102 now. No one, believe it or not, I'm an 0102. And most of the majors, junior majors who were company commanders at First Tanks, all of them have lateral moved. And the lieutenants, now captains who are staying in, they're laterally moving. I think there's only one officer that I'm tracking who might be looking at inter-service transfer. Not that it's a great opportunity. You want to be a war fighter, you want to be in, a tanker, then the Marine Corps can no longer offer that to you. Right. But for your sergeants and your staff sergeants, they don't have the number of lat move opportunities that we have here. There's a couple of them here on the depot, and trying to leverage some of our recruiting stuff to like, hey, come be a career recruiter. If you don't want to be a career recruiter, then you can do that route and then put an F, and then you can get back to the fleet on your fitness report. But even with those guys, I mean, you can go be a postal Marine. So I think a lot of the enlisted Marines are executing the inter-service transfer, and I think that's a great opportunity. That's a steal for the Army. They're going to get some outstanding Marine tankers coming over there. They were just going to embarrass their soldier counterparts with their proficiency and their leadership. And it's an opportunity for them to continue to grow and develop. So, I mean, it's tough. The decision was made. Get over it. Frankly, that's it. And there's a lot of guys who are hanging on. And man, I get it. I love tanks, but I love being a Marine more than I love being a Marine tanker. And the decision is made, and it's not going to get reversed. So move on. And how do we take care of the tankers at this point? Because the tanks are gone. There ain't a ramp out there, as you were. There ain't a motor pool out there that has a tank on it, but they're still tankers. And so we got to retain the people. And that's what tanks are. The tanks is just a composition of people. It's the people that matter. So we all have a role in that right now. And it's just it's a tough spot, but there's options out there for the officers. If you haven't made a choice yet, get off your ass and do it while it's voluntary, because if not, it's going to become involuntarily, and you're going to be offered something that you don't want, and it's going to be too late, brother. So it is what it is. Sure.
No, I appreciate that word, sir. And I mean, that's a great way to just kind of sum it up, particularly the difference between, the officer choices and the enlisted choices. And to circle back for a moment, Rear Area Maintenance Pad is the acronym that is in the book, sir.
Find me, show me one doctrinal publication where it has ramp in it. In fact,
Rear
Major
Area
Ryan
Maintenance Pad.
That subordinate little shit, Major Ryan Strell, I hope you're watching this, sent me a text the other day showing me some bull crap ATFP Marfor Res order that had tank ramp. And I'm like, oh, come on, it's lowercase letters. So there you go, right there. It's not an acronym, but it's motor pool. It's motor pool.
Yes, sir. As the first interview of 2021, sir, thank you very much. Happy New Year to you, and to the viewers. Thank you for making this past year very special, despite all the challenges that 2020 has certainly posed to us. Definitely with the community as well. This channel is strong because of you, and I thank you all for the support. If you've not already done so, please do subscribe, press the notification bell for new episodes. And sir, thank you. I know you're very busy, and I really do appreciate you making this time, especially this week to come on and do this interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, sir, parting comments are yours.
Uh, I would like to point out that my loader, John Trask, who you had on in recent episodes, is the worst marksman. Couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with an M203. In fact, when he finally did one put in the general vicinity of a car that was probably 100 meters away, it was a V-bid and it exploded. And so thanks for that, John Trask. Thank you very much for that. And I'm sure his feelings are still hurt from the rest of the crew laughing hysterically at him in the process. So when I tell you about those things that only Marines would laugh at while people are getting shot and blown up around us, we're laughing at his inability to hit a car 100 yards away with a 203. And if that was even bad enough, we pulled up alongside a truck for him to drop a thermite grenade in it. He missed. All he had to do was drop it, and he missed. So you need to remind him of that one, and I hope you're watching that, Trask. Gotcha. But no, otherwise, no, man, I think it's a great thing that you're doing, and it's good. And, offline, I can give you any number of folks. I would love to see some mechanics on here and some other folks who have served in the tank battalions. Probably tank mechanics is the closest thing that we're going to have, because those guys have been serving alongside us. And we all know tanks don't go anywhere unless you got a good mech supporting cast. But there's too many fantastic Marines that we've all served alongside. And so if I forgot someone's name, I'm sorry. I still love you, but I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. With that, sir, thank you very much. And like I said, Happy New Year to you and yours, and Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.